experiences and digitizing the telco, which is like our internal keyword for we're trying to do things in a modern sense and improve the technologies and practices that we do on behalf of our customers so that we can make better products and services for the Canadian public. We build our entire tech stack is all in Node.js based, React, all modern software based. We have a team of I think 300 people by last count. We're always hiring, so hint, hint, wink, wink, not judge. I'd love to meet and talk to you a little bit more about your journey to software development, how you learned about it, how you got into it, what makes you passionate about it. A lot of our team members have either came from Lighthouse Labs or different programs and learned on their own. I was self-taught about software development and programming, so there's a lot of good stories that we can perhaps share and talk about. So please come and find me later, and yeah, enjoy.
Can we also call up Darcy to say maybe a couple words about Node School? Awesome. Maybe a round of applause for Darcy. Darcy from Node School.
Awesome. Thank you. I didn't know I was going to get a chance to actually talk. Node School Toronto runs once a month here. We've been running for about 2.5 years. We've sort of coordinated with FreeCodeCamp as well, so we run our events on Saturdays, and FreeCodeCamp runs every week, which is amazing. So anybody that's obviously wants to learn anything about Node or server-side JavaScript, come talk to me. We don't have any stickers here or anything, but I think there's going to be like a, I guess, in-kind paid-for treat or like treat session, I guess, in the afternoon. So yeah, anyways, thank you. Thank you for coming out. And I'm at Darcy on Twitter. Follow me. Yeah. Yeah, good.
And now, without further ado, we would like to introduce the man that needs no introduction, the founder and teacher at FreeCodeCamp, Quincy Larson. Thank you for coming all the way to the great white north to us. Thank you.
Hello. All right. How's everybody feeling today? Yeah! All right. So I'm going to be sharing some cool stuff that's going on in the FreeCodeCamp community. I'm so honored to fly in and crash with Izzy in his wonderful Airbnb and just have this great time here in Toronto. Every single person I've met has been super friendly. So you all are doing a great job of keeping up the reputation of Canada being the friendliest country on earth. So I love it here. I'm going to definitely come back as much as I can. So I think we're going to switch to my laptop, and I'm just going to start demoing stuff and talking really loud. Let me see if I can make things even bigger, just to make sure everybody can see everything. Okay, so first of all, you may have heard, but we have an Instagram account now. We were a little bit late to Instagram. We were like, is this just a fad? Or is this going to actually be like a useful, cool tool that people enjoy? So we've been posting a lot of photos here. This is run by a guy named Richard out of Leeds. He is the organizer of FreeCodeCamp Leeds, and he is in control of this. And you know, he posts little gags like this one. Got a few chuckles there, and also lots of photos from different FreeCodeCamp study groups around the world. FreeCodeCamp Hong Kong, FreeCodeCamp New York, a lot of European places, Asian places, and I believe if we scroll down here, we have FreeCodeCamp Toronto. You'll note that Alex's face takes up like a quarter of the shot there. It's a really, really great selfie of the group. So I just wanted everybody to be aware. We've got an Instagram, and if you share a picture with the hashtag FreeCodeCamp, and if you mention FreeCodeCamp, then Richard may cross-post it here and credit you, of course. And if you have a study group, really it doesn't matter how small it is, even if it's just a couple people in a neighborhood like a suburb of Toronto or wherever that gets together regularly and you want to take a photo, go ahead and share it on Instagram and we'll pick it up and we'll share it too. Next, I'm very excited to share the FreeCodeCamp Talks YouTube channel, which we just launched last week. This has all kinds of amazing conference talks, many of which come from FreeCodeCamp contributors like Hasib Qureshi and Corey House. And we've just got so many great talks on here, and we're going to share a whole lot more. We're going to be posting like 1 or 2 talks a week. These are like 30, 40-minute conference talks. You shouldn't see any ads on here. All of this should be completely ad-free, and you can just go and check it out and watch world-class developer tech talks at your convenience. Next, I'm sure a lot of you are interested in what's coming with the FreeCodeCamp beta. Anybody interested in that? All right. Well, it's been a long time coming, but we are making serious progress. So this is all live at beta.freecodecamp.org. We've turned off account creation for now just because people are getting confused and thinking that like we would persist their data, but we're not planning on keeping any of the data from the beta because we don't want to like corrupt any databases or anything. So this is basically read-only mode, but you can go in and you can still do the challenges. And so you can see that we've got 6 certificates. We're going to have our legacy certificates too that you can still claim, but we've got 6 new specialized certificates. Responsive web design, which covers accessibility and responsive web design and Flexbox, and it's all HTML and CSS. There are no libraries. You just focus on building projects with vanilla HTML and CSS. And then we've got our JavaScript algorithms and data structures, which is just JavaScript. There's no UI entanglement at all. And that'll cover a lot of functional programming, and we're adding a ton of data structures and algorithms challenges, which I can show you in a second. And we've got the front-end libraries, which just focuses on popular libraries for front-end development. By the way, the React and Redux challenges are already live. They're just not live on the FreeCodeCamp platform because we're still trying to build that out. But you can jump over to the demo. I'll link to it. Actually, I think I already linked to it from the FAQ about the beta. And then we also have data visualization focused on D3. Data visualization is going to be a killer skill going forward as data becomes more and more integral to pretty much anything that anybody does. And it's a good kind of baseline for moving into data science and machine learning and just working with data sets, which all of you, if you're going into development, are going to spend a lot of your careers doing, I suspect. And then we have the information security and quality assurance and the APIs and microservices, which focus on Node, Express. We're using Node School currently, and I love the workshoppers. We've built something else that works with glitch.com, which is a really cool kind of Node environment that you can do right in your browser, and we hit endpoints. You build an API, and we hit the endpoints from FreeCodeCamp and test that they respond like they're supposed to. So it's still interactive on FreeCodeCamp, but you're building the projects on Glitch, unless we can get, Google or Amazon or somebody to give us like 1,000 servers. We could potentially run everything on FreeCodeCamp itself. So after you do all that stuff, we also have an interview prep section, which is totally new. We've got Rosetta Code problems. There are a lot of them around basic logical puzzles and things like that. And then we have the Project Euler problems, which are, has anybody heard of Project Euler? So it's a great website that's been around for like 20 years, and there are just so many amazing challenges on there. I think it's like 600, and some of them are really hard and mathematically intensive. But we're porting all of those to FreeCodeCamp, and you'll be able to build like right in the coding environment on FreeCodeCamp. You'll be able to run them, and a lot of them require a lot of CPU cycles because they're they're designed to be run on a local machine, but we're going to figure out some workarounds to get them to run really smoothly in a browser. And then we're just building a ton of different projects like peer-to-peer chat, peer-to-peer video chat, and things like that, where you build out a new app and you've got agile user stories that you follow. So I'm going to show you real quick what the challenges currently look like. We're trying to make it simpler and have a lot more space and a lot more flexibility. So this is what it currently looks like when you're in a challenge. And you can see that there's like a large preview over on the right-hand side. There is a coding editor here in the middle, and then there's the lesson and the console output and the test output that we normally have. The great thing is you can turn parts of these off, and you can just like have a full page preview, or you can have a full page editor if you want to do that and just focus on the code. We're going to have multiple file editors, so you can have a JSX file, you can have an HTML file, a CSS file, a SAS file, whatever the challenge requires. You'll have multiple editors for that, and you can resize these, and you can just kind of drag them and stuff. So I'll just run this real quick. So you can see that it's got little toasts that says, keep trying, you haven't passed this challenge. This is one of our new accessibility challenges, adding a date picker. So let me see if I can get that to run again. All right, and so I've added like a date picker here, and you can see this is just an HTML5 element, but it makes it really accessible to go through and pick a date. And a lot of the research of ARIA is and the HTML5 standards team has been implemented, so you can take advantage of these tools and make it easier for people who can't see, for example, or can't hear, or don't have good motor skills, for those people to use your web interfaces as well. And as you can see, we can drag these to resize them. It's going to be pretty cool. And the other thing that I'm really excited about is our new projects, which have tests built into them. You can build them anywhere. So this is what one of our new projects looks like. This is the old calculator app. How many people have built the FreeCodeCamp calculator app? Wow, that's a lot. So this is the same old calculator app. It's coded in React. And you can click this button here. You can run the tests. And you can see that all 16 tests ran. You can click it, and you can see exactly what the tests were that ran. And you can also, break the tests. I'll just remove the ID, the DOM element that all this React was attaching to. Then I'll run the test again. I have to save it. Oops. CodePen's trying to make me sign up. Okay, and you can see that the test failed. And you can figure out exactly which test failed. So the great thing about this is we're just pulling it in from a CDN. So I'm going to show you, like, this is what it looks like if I add it to JSBin, for example. All I'm adding is that script tag that links to the CDN that has all the tests. And now I've got runnable tests right here in this environment. If you're building the apps locally on your computer, as long as you have an internet connection, you should be able to use that CDN and pull that in. So you can build these apps anywhere, and then when you submit it, you just submit a URL to wherever your project is live. And Bob's your uncle. The next thing that I just announced yesterday morning, I don't know how many people even saw this. Raise your hand if you saw this. Okay, great. So thanks for reading the emails that I send out. So the FreeCodeCamp Podcast is now live, and we were like, what's the cool 21st century way to release a whole lot of anything, right? It's to do the Netflix approach where you just drop a whole lot of it all at once. So we pushed 6 episodes. I've got another episode that I'm going to publish on Monday. We're going to publish an episode every Monday. So check it out. This covers the story of Alvaro, who grew up in Uruguay and basically had very limited access to the internet, limited access to technical books, and just through sheer force of will was able to get good enough at coding that he got a job, and that led to another job, and eventually he was working for Apple and EMC and a whole lot of other big companies as a developer. So I read this out loud, like all 3 of the episodes, and we've also got some other great episodes on here, like Bo Carnes, who runs the FreeCodeCamp YouTube channel. He had like an incredible work ethic and very good time management, and he was able to accomplish a tremendous amount of stuff in a very short period of time. And then some other episodes. So the podcast format is basically reading out loud and kind of like sharing other insights and reading comments and stuff. So it's very dense. You'll learn a whole lot very quickly. And this is like, I usually listen to my podcasts on double speed, but this was so dense that I found myself kicking it down to 1.5 speed. So raise your hand if you've contributed to FreeCodeCamp in some way, like through a code contribution. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. Did anybody participate in Hacktoberfest last month? All right, I see quite a few people. So there are so many ways that you can cut your teeth at contributing to open source. And one of them is to contribute to the FreeCodeCamp code base. We also have what's called the FreeCodeCamp Guide, which I'm going to show you right now. Have you heard of the FreeCodeCamp Guide? So what this is it's like the Mozilla Developer Network, except instead of having a bunch of jargon and a lot of links to academic papers and stuff like that, we wanted to focus on making things as readable as possible. It's basically like good enough explanations of different programming concepts. You can see we've got like a lot of stuff in here. We've got an entire series of articles on C, for example, how to pass pointers to functions. We've got a lot of stuff on Clojure. We're writing about blockchain, a ton of documentation on libraries like Bootstrap. And then we're just planning to basically take everything that's even tangentially related to software development and have short explainers on what that concept is. The idea being that when I first learned to code and I was working at my first job as a developer, I would constantly hear people mention different things that I had no idea what they were. Like somebody was talking about UML and they were talking about like optional meatballs and things like that. And I was like, what the heck is that? And then if I had had a resource like that, I would have been like, great, functional programming. If you go to Wikipedia and you search for functional programming, if I can type with one hand. So this is what the Wikipedia functional programming article looks like. So you can see that like it's very dense and there are just a ton of links to what's declarative programming, what's mutable data. Like in order to read this and understand what functional programming was, if you really had no idea of what it was, it would be a lot of clicking around and kind of spidering through Wikipedia. FreeCodeCamp, the guide, we have functional programming in here. I think it's under software engineering. Well, let me just look for it. Check this out. We have full text search. So we've got this indexes all the YouTube videos, indexes all the articles. It's going to index all the articles on Medium as well. So if I just type functional programming, here it is. And you can see that it's a little easier to read. and it has like why would you use functional programming, and it doesn't have a whole lot of boilerplate, and it's not beating you over the head, and it has some links to other helpful Medium articles and things like that. Like this is an Eric Elliott article on functional programming. He's one of the most prominent thought leaders in the JavaScript world. So the idea is it's almost kind of like a TLDR of what that concept is. And we have it, right now we have about 2,000 or 3,000 articles in here on all kinds of different technologies. And this is something that is really easy to contribute to. So let's say hypothetically I wanted to write an article here on brand identity. So there's this button here, it says, this is a stub, help our community expand it. And if you click it, it takes you right to GitHub, and the file's right here, and you can see that it's just a markdown file. You just click edit, and you can make the changes, and then you can just go down and commit your changes and open a pull request, all within GitHub's user interface. So we had more than 5,000 pull requests adding articles or expanding upon them during Hacktoberfest. The guide's repo was the most popular overall repo during Hacktoberfest. So, in short, we've got a whole lot of stuff going on at FreeCodeCamp. We're building a whole lot of stuff very quickly, and if you're interested in contributing, there are a whole lot of ways you can do it. First, FreeCodeCamp is a community, and it's also a learning resource. The FreeCodeCamp community basically built the resource, and the resource helps build up the community and helps everybody increase their skills and get more opportunities to work as developers and to build projects of their own. So some of the ways that you can help, if you're interested in helping out your fellow campers, is you can give feedback on camper projects. And we have a section of the FreeCodeCamp forum that's just dedicated to this. And if you go to that contribute.freecodecamp.org and click that link, it'll take you to the project feedback, and it'll sort by all the most recent posts that people have made sharing their projects that haven't been responded to yet. So I'm very proud to say that the response time, this is a graph of the response time, hours. It has leveled out to where the average response time to somebody posting a project they built wanting feedback, or posting a question if they get stuck on an algorithm challenge or something like that, it's dropped to 1 hour. So if you ask a question on the FreeCodeCamp forum, you will likely get an answer within an hour. So it's practically as good as real-time chat. We still have Gitter, it's still quite active, but this way you can just create like a quick post, go eat a sandwich, come back, and you've got your answer. So I encourage all of you to not only make use of this if you have any sort of coding questions, and it's not limited to FreeCodeCamp questions. If you want to ask questions, if you're doing like a C project for your computer science class at university or something, you can ask that. If you're building an app and you just want some help with like setting things up on Heroku or something like that, you can ask that too. Our idea is basically Stack Overflow without people marking questions as duplicates or closing as like not a proper question. It's basically like our philosophy on there is, when in doubt, just answer the question. It's faster to answer the question than it is to spout off some arcane rule. So we keep it pretty rule-free, and as a result, it's just a super chill place to ask questions and give answers. And again, we would really welcome your help if you're interested in it. If you're just hanging out on a Saturday afternoon and you have an hour, jump in here and start answering questions. And finally, on the topic of the forum, we have this section of the forum that's called Getting a Developer Job. How many of you have heard of this section? Okay, great. So this is all questions about getting a developer job. FreeCodeCamp helps a lot of people. There are a lot of K through 12 programs using FreeCodeCamp. There are a lot of university study groups. There are even FreeCodeCamp is being used in prisons to rehabilitate prisoners and help them prepare for life on the outside. But our core group of people whom we want to help are career changers who are, adults, working adults, busy adults. Median age of somebody using FreeCodeCamp is 30. And our primary goal is to help you get a job and increase your quality of life economically, give you creative work where it feels meaningful. We have tons of people who are transitioning from fields like accounting, transitioning from being truck drivers, transitioning from being carpenters, and there are a tremendous number of opportunities for everybody to move into software development. The field is exploding, and pretty much every job out there that's like a traditional white-collar service sector job or knowledge worker job is going to require some amount of coding, certainly over the next 15 or 20 years. So really, all of you who are learning to code, you're just ahead of the curve, because pretty much everybody's going to have to go back and retrain if they want to keep their skills relevant. So again, I just want to make it unambiguous. You all who are interested in going out and getting a developer job, you're the community's priority, and this community is for you. So I've talked a whole lot. I want to hear your questions and answer any questions. I think I've still got maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So
All right, so if you have questions, raise your hand. I'll come by with the microphone. I'll give you the microphone. There we go. Perfect.
Thanks, Alex. No problem. Hi there, and thanks for such a good talk and for the event as well. My question for you is, what got you into the development world? Like, why did you started with development?
okay, great. Thank you very much for the question. So the question was, why did I, Quincy, start working in development, and what brought me in? So I worked as a school director and as a teacher for about a decade here in the US and in China. And I just wanted to make my school more efficient. We were doing a ton of back office stuff. We were doing a lot of work trying to make sure that all the students had their grade reports on time, and we had, you know, attendance data that we could share with the government and other parties, and just a whole lot of moving data around. And so I just learned some very basic automation with like Excel and a few random tools to kind of automate completing forms. And, you know, I was just, you know, a typical, like, I wore a suit and I stood in an office and talked to students all day and talked to teachers. And I didn't know anything about technology, really. Like, when we moved, my wife had to set up the Wi-Fi because I couldn't figure it out. So that shows you, like, so basically I just sat down and I was really motivated. I had like clear problems I wanted to solve. I didn't want my teachers and my administrators to spend all day tethered to their computer. I wanted them interacting with students. And I mean, that's what school's all about, right? It's about interpersonal relationships. It's not about data entry. And you know, I'd go to the doctor's office, I'd see the same thing. Like, the doctor is spending most of the time on the computer instead of talking. You know, pretty much everything is moving toward taking data and moving it around. And there were so many opportunities that were just really apparent to me. And so that's why I started doing that. And my goal was just to eventually build like an entire structure that could be used to power schools, like that would automate a lot of the back end stuff so the admin and the teachers could spend more time. And but in order to build that, I had to learn to code. And when I started learning to code, I realized there was this huge gap between like the basic tutorials that would come up when you Googled something like learn Python and the actual stuff that people were really doing, like building actual projects. So you get like a lot of very basic tutorials, and then you get a lot of very advanced tutorials, but there was very little that was bridging the gap. And so because it was so difficult, I decided maybe I should just create a resource that can help other people and they can learn alongside me. And we can all share resources and we can help each other stay motivated. And so FreeCodeCamp really started as that. I had a curated list of resources. We had a chat room, and I just started blogging about it, and people started hanging out and helping build out the platform, and it just grew from there.
All right, any more questions? Okay, who was first? I don't know. We'll take one by one.
What's really interesting to me is that FreeCodeCamp is on an international scale right now. Can you tell me more about how that came about?
Great question. So the question was, FreeCodeCamp's operating on an international scale right now. How did that come about? The thing about the developer community is, there aren't really any borders. People speak different languages. People have different levels of access to the internet, some more free than others. But in general, everybody's just trying to learn how to move data around and present data to people and pipe everything together. We're all in it together trying to learn all this and trying to adopt the emergent best practices. So right off the bat, when FreeCodeCamp started, only about 30% of our traffic was coming from North America. People were using it in China and India and a whole lot of other countries, Brazil. And as a result, when we started having the local study groups, those were some of the first places, like different metropolises like Toronto around the world kind of sprung up. And so it's always been international because the internet is international and the developer community is international.
All right, so another question here.
As far as developer jobs go, I would imagine that they would prefer full-time employees with the rather involved nature of software development. But what tips do you have as a high school student going to university next year to get a part-time job to help manage my finances?
So if I understand the question correctly, what tips do I have for getting a part-time job as a student? So first of all, if you go to a university, I don't know how it is in Canada, but in the US, I don't want to slight them too much, but like university technology is behind the times. Like I know that at University of California, Santa Barbara, where I was living right by there and interacting with a lot of their IT staff, they had apps that you had to open up in Netscape Navigator because they were not they were not forward compatible with like modern browsers. So people would have to have, like every single computer at every admin desk had Netscape Navigator installed. And so there's just so many things that need to be fixed and improved. If you ask for a job in like a computer lab, or if you go and talk to your professor or your department chair, you can probably figure out some way that you can help improve something. Even if you just go up and say, hey, what's something that is really tedious that you don't like doing anymore? And then they're like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, let me see if I can automate that for you. One thing that I encourage people, don't think that you're going to necessarily get wages right off the bat. Just go out and put yourself out there and prove that you're able to get things done. That's what employers really want. They just want somebody who can get things done. And there are a ton of part-time opportunities that are there on a university campus. There are tons of opportunities for like building, freelance projects within various communities. You go to a local business, you just say, hey, I noticed your web page looks like it's from 2006. Can I modernize it for you? Things like that. Or can I improve your Facebook page? It starts there. You just kind of have to get your proverbial foot in the door, and then you can move on to more advanced stuff, and they'll trust you with more and more permissions and more, they'll let you take on more risky things that might involve them, if you screw up, it compromises their brand and things like that. But just incrementally getting your foot in the door.
We've got a question from online, from the people streaming in, from Cody Watson. Would you consider writing a course for Vue.js?
Great question. So I've talked with the Vue.js team, and I think that Vue.js is an incredible piece of technology, and it's very popular as a React alternative, and it's very fast. We will almost certainly have a series of guides on Vue.js in guide.freecodecamp.org. We may create supplementary interactive challenges on freecodecamp.org's like core platform on Vue.js as well. For now, it seems clear that React is having a moment and that employers are tripping over themselves to find people that are good with React. So we're going to focus on teaching React as the primary front-end library at the moment. But I'm very enthusiastic about the prospects for Vue.js as well.
All right, more questions.
Hi, Quincy. Speaking of getting the foot in the door, my partner and I just got, my friend and I, just got out of boot camp, and I wanted to know if you have any advice for us for how to get our foot in the door in the market.
Absolutely. There's a great article that if you Google coding bootcamp, I think it actually comes up like the first result. It's one of the first results, at least in the US. Okay, here it is. I spent 3 months applying for jobs after a coding boot camp. Here's what I learned. So first of all, the thing that you need to know about this is he did not need to spend 3 months. He got a whole lot of offers. I think he got like 6 offers or something, like 8 offers, right? This guy named Felix Fung, he's a really cool guy, and I've really enjoyed corresponding with him and reading about his experience. But he's created like tons of different stats from like his job search. Now he was doing this in San Francisco, but basically the longer he went, the more offers he secured. He kept using those to ratchet up like his starting compensation. And you can see toward the end, he got up into the $120,000 US range. Now, I think he had like a degree from Berkeley already, so I'm not saying that you should expect to go out and get $120 US, even if you do this, but I think the model that he's laid out here is really strong, and I would just recommend, I guess, Googling Coding Bootcamp, and this should come up as the first link.
We've got another question from online, from Anikesh Kamath. I'm starting a coding club in my college next semester. Do you have any ideas for activities that I can host?
Absolutely. I think having hackathons, if you can get that together, even if it's not overnight, just have like a day-long hackathon and see if you can get some API providers and things like that who would sponsor and provide pizza and maybe give prizes. You know, pretty much every community has some tech company in there. And if you can get them to host it, or if you're on a university campus, you can probably just talk to the administrators and get a classroom for the day. But that sort of thing where you're building a project and you're collaborating with other people, it really builds bonds. And at the end of the day, you just want to help everybody stay motivated to learn to code. Learning to code, anybody can do it. It's just a question of whether you can deal with all the setbacks and the error messages and just keep persevering. Learning to code is a motivational challenge. It's not a technical one.
Hi Quincy, my name is Naima. My question for you is that I really like that you have built-in tests now with your projects. Is that something FreeCodeCamp is going to teach?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
The built-in tests that you have for the projects, is testing something that you're going to teach in the future?
Absolutely. One of the new certificates that will launch as soon as we launch beta, which we don't have a firm date, but it's coming soon and it's getting closer every day. We're making rapid progress on it. One of the certificates is called Quality Assurance and Information Security, and we're going to cover basic information security, like stuff, how to use Helmet.js, which is a really good library for securing your app. And we're also going to cover using Chai and Mocha and some of these JavaScript front-end testing frameworks as well. So you'll be writing unit tests, you'll be writing functional tests.
Thank you. Steven here with my NPower group. First of all, before I joined the program, I did FreeCodeCamp, like the front-end certificate, and I realized a lot of the projects are pretty much like solo, right? Like you do it alone. Is there any plans in the future where you would, collaborate with someone, maybe someone from somewhere else, that they'd be doing like back-end back-end stuff, whereas you as a front-end developer would, just create something together, pretty much.
Absolutely, and I want to emphasize that the projects that are part of the FreeCodeCamp core certificates, those are just a starting point. Like, I view the entire FreeCodeCamp curriculum is basically just a foundation upon which you can use that, and you can specialize in doing front-end development, you can specialize in doing DevOps, InfoSec, whatever you're interested in, but you'll have a strong foundation. So really those first 30 projects, including the algorithms, which we're just going to choose the 5 hardest algorithms and make those required, and all the other algorithms will be optional. Pretty much everything's optional except for each certificate has 5 required projects. All those projects are designed to be done by yourself at your own pace, at your own convenience. There are a lot of more elaborate ways that we could go about doing these things, but our real goal is to keep things convenient as possible, because the typical camper, has a lot of responsibilities. They're working, or they're going to school, they've got kids, they've got a mortgage they need to service. They don't necessarily have the flexibility to show up at meetings at specific times. So we wanted FreeCodeCamp to be entirely self-paced and entirely remote and entirely done in a browser for those reasons, so that you can just sit down at whatever computer's in front of you and make some progress real quick and do it in little bite-sized bursts. There are a lot of initiatives within the FreeCodeCamp community to try to build projects together, like Chingu is one. Has anybody heard of Chingu? Okay, so Chingu is like a cohorted. It's basically like, hey, we're all going to work through FreeCodeCamp together at the same pace, and they have like cohorts, like every few weeks they'll start a new cohort. We think that's great, and we kind of tried some of that stuff early on in FreeCodeCamp. We put a strong emphasis on pair programming. What we experienced was a vast majority of people are just too busy to reliably be able to do that. One of the things we're hoping to do with the 2,000 plus study groups that are now around the world, we're hoping that these FreeCodeCamp study groups can start building projects locally together over the course of several events. They can build up something, and people can specialize, and they can delegate different tasks that way. We're hoping to do that at the local level. We'd also like to explore taking a lot of the nonprofit projects, which we've been doing centralized, and having, like, FreeCodeCamp Toronto would find a local nonprofit that they want to build something for, and that process would be carried out entirely locally, where you could have face-to-face meetings instead of just having these kind of distant Skype chats and things like that.
We've got another question from online from Carl Charret. Question for Quincy. Facebook is slowly digitally fencing the web. What is the future of the free web?
I've written about this. I think that there is, I think Facebook is so big that you can't really avoid it. Like, we use Facebook extensively just because everybody has a Facebook account. They have excellent groups. Their groups functionality is really good. You can create events in there. It's free. Meetup costs money, things like that. So, and Facebook is also a pretty good patron of the open source software world. There was that backlash against the React license where it was like BSD license, but with this patent clause, and they got rid of that and switched to MIT just because they care about the developer community and they care about people using React and things like that. So there's this tension between like companies like Google and Facebook doing great things to help expedite our arrival at like a kind of almost a post-mobile app world where everything can just run in a browser and it's super fast, and that way you don't have the Apple Store taxing you 30% on everything you do, or the Google Store and their ability to just pull your app instantly. You've still got the open web. That's the dream. Facebook, Google, they want the open web where everything's just a web app and you just go to a URL and everything runs right there, instead of having to go download something from a store and having those walled gardens. So in some ways, Facebook is helping keep the web open even as it locks down its own little corner of the web. If you're really curious and you want to hear what I have to say about this, I've written about, it's like a 30-minute Medium article. It's pretty long. It's got really cool art, because I always like to choose cool contemporary art and put it in my articles. But it's primarily about net neutrality, but it also talks about how Facebook and Google could cordon off certain chunks of the web to the point that very few people are actually using the web, and the majority of them are just trapped in ecosystems.
Okay, we're going to take one more question, and then we'll start on the panel. So I've seen your hand for a while, so I have to give you the microphone.
Thank you. Quincy, thanks for coming and giving us a talk. My question is, as people progress in their career, let's say after FreeCodeCamp or Bootcamp, do you see the need for them to kind of implement the computer science knowledge as they go along? And if so, do you have recommendations for the resources for that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that FreeCodeCamp constantly advocates is just making use of this wide gamut of free open resources, and all the best universities in the world, in order to stay relevant in the public eye, have been publishing a whole lot of great free open courses. There's a site called Class Central that I'm friends with the guy who runs it, and he's been around for a long time. He's been basically focused on free open courses for a long time, and you can check out Class Central, and we also publish a lot of articles by the creator of Class Central. Let me just find one real quick. So this is one that we published recently. My humble advice, this is 430 free online programming and computer science classes that started in November. Some of these are cohorted, some of these are just completely self-paced. I would strongly recommend looking through this list, and this article sorts everything by the different categories and the relative difficulty, and a lot of these have just a tremendous number of reviews that my friend Dawal, who runs Class Central, has aggregated over time. Make use of all this stuff. Like, the one thing I guess I would want to drive home is FreeCodeCamp is like a foundation, and then there are a tremendous number of additional, even more advanced resources that you should also be using. Please don't view FreeCodeCamp as like a one-stop shop where that represents all you need to know. Because what you need to know is just constantly expanding. Everybody here is going to need to learn how to do machine learning. Everybody here is going to need to learn how to do data visualization. You're not going to be able to avoid it. I think that these things are just going to be critical to development. But the good news is, right now, you can go out and get a really good job if you just know how to do WordPress. You can get a reasonably good job if you just know how to do basic, maintaining Linux boxes, things like that. So there are a lot of entry points, but if you really want to get like the $1 million salaries at Google and Facebook and places like that, and yes, there are developers who just develop software, they're not managers or anything, and they make $1 million a year. If you want to go that high up, you're going to need to go deep into math and computer science. You don't need to learn it, but every little bit you learn will help you. That's what I would encourage you to think about. And that's why the FreeCodeCamp curriculum is going to continue to get longer and longer, and more stuff is going to be in there that is like basically core topics. Like I said, machine learning, data science. We're doing a section called Math for Programmers. It's going to basically cover all of college math interactively, where you're like coding. So those are all 2018, 2019 things. I think about FreeCodeCamp 20 years out. Wikipedia's 20 years old. I think it's like 18 years old now. I think that in 15 years, FreeCodeCamp can be where Wikipedia is today, in terms of just being this giant community and this giant resource that everybody can use to continue to develop their careers and find new opportunities.
All right. So in about 5 minutes, we will start with the panel. And during this time, allow for some people going back and forth and just organizing stuff. So I think Izzy will introduce the panelists, and then I'll take over from there.
Can I please have all Can I please have all the panelists for the next panel come up? We've got Alex Calloway, Andrew Charlebois, Maddie Shang, Emily Fan, Christina Groger, and Leonardo Rossi. Can I invite all of you up to the front and grab a seat over here? Is Maddie here? Maddie, oh, there she is.
She's here, yes.
Coming up.
No worries, that's why I said 5 minutes. So, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction of all of our panelists, including Alex, who's going to be on the panel as well. So we've got Alex Calloway, moderator from 100 Days of Code. Alex Calloway is a self-taught web developer. He's amassed a lot of knowledge on learning and habit formation, as well as techniques, methods on dealing with stress and struggle along the journey. He's created the 100 Days of Code challenge out of frustration with not finding the time to constantly learn on his own. Alex has made the challenge rules public, and since then, hundreds of people have taken the challenge, and the 100 Days of Code community has grown around it on Twitter. You can find more info on 100daysofcode.com. He's also one of the fellow organizers of the FreeCodeCamp Toronto meetup. We've got Andrew in the middle. Andrew Charlebois is a 29-year-old self-taught front-end developer. Working at Mirum, a global digital agency for 45 offices around the world, mirumagency.com, for nearly 1 year, he jump-started his career by intensely studying through FreeCodeCamp for 4 months. Before his deep dive into the tech world, Andrew studied building construction, structural science, while working as a carpenter. Andrew's current interests lie in JavaScript, CSS3 animation, and becoming proficient at React.js. While at work, he also uses PHP, Symfony 1 and 2, and in his spare time, he's begun organizing and co-hosting events for FreeCodeCamp Montreal. When he's not coding, he's found hanging out with his daughter, Nevea? Nevea. We've got Maddie Shang. Maddie is an ex-finance professional turned software developer currently working at OKGrow, a Toronto-based web and mobile development house, where she works as an intermediate JS and machine learning engineer. With her interest and expertise in cryptocurrency and machine learning, Maddie is also a contributor to the Ethereum and Dash ecosystem as a consultant and educator. Her fearless, adventure-seeking personality means she has also dabbled into the entrepreneur world as a Next 36 entrepreneur. We've got Emily Fan over here. Do you want to raise your hand? Emily is a software developer passionate about technology and community building. She currently works as a developer at Shopify, where she builds internal tools and helps the company grow faster. Sorry, the pizza's calling. She is a founder. Can someone go deal with pizza? Min, do you want to go? She currently works as a developer at Shopify, where she builds internal tools that help the community grow faster. She's a co-founder of 2 community groups, Rails Girls TO and Civic Tech Toronto, and has a diverse professional background, with experience working in startups, government, and the private sector. She holds a master's degree from the London School of Economics and an undergrad degree from the University of Toronto. She's also a grad from Bitmaker Labs, a Toronto-based coding school. We've got Christina Groger at the end. Am I saying your last name right? You did. Excellent. Christina Groger is a front-end web developer with just under 4 years of experience. She's worked with Intuit, Capital One, and Loblaw Company Limited, none of which required JavaScript, which she's been working on perfecting for centuries. She's completely self-taught and previously a chef for 13 years. Currently, Christina is into making small video games using Phaser.js, Bitsy, and animating Lieutenant Worf's SVG to dance to sexy music. Excellent. And last but not least, we've got Leonardo Rossi, a full-stack web developer in Toronto that came from Brazil a year and a half ago. Before that, Leo worked there as a database administrator for 10 years and was an Oracle DB instructor on his spare time. Even before that, he worked as a NetSec administrator, SysOp, business intelligence developer, and a PHP 3 programmer, but that was around 15 years ago. Leo is also one of our recent grads from Lighthouse Labs.
Not so recent.
Not so recent. About a year and a half ago?
Yeah, last September.
Last September. Great. So I'll pass this over to Alex, and we can get going.
With my papers. I need my papers. Thank you so much. All right, so let's shuffle them. All right, so we'll start with a question. What made you interested in coding? All right, so we'll go from the other end. So Christina, if you could start us off with that question.
Welcome from the other end. Okay, what made me start developing? When I was a kid, the first video game thing we got was an Atari, so it was actually brown and orange. I'm a little bit older than I look, centuries old. Anyhow, so there was a game in which you had to program the turtle to move around, and I was 3 or 4, and that's always been, I remember being obsessed with it. I wouldn't sleep. I would go in. My mom had to take the TV away, so that was, but firstly, that got me into coding. I was obsessed with playing little games like that.
I first actually got into coding when I was in high school. I might be dating myself a little bit, but there was this website that was really popular in the Asian community called Asian Avenue. Does anyone, remember Asian Avenue? So it was kind of like MySpace, but like marketed towards Asians. And you could customize your web page with HTML and CSS, and so I was really into customizing my own site, and I would just like inspect other people's sites and copy all the code and do all the inline CSS just to customize my theme. So that was earlier on, and then later on in life I worked in policy and finance for quite a while. I was building a budgeting application for my company, and I didn't really know what was going on in the background, and there were so many bugs, and I was really frustrated with not really knowing how to fix things, so I started learning how to code on the side so I knew what was happening with the application we were building.
So Andrew?
So I started coding when I was a teen. Anybody know Neopets? Anybody play that game? Yeah, lots. So I started doing, I guess you could do some HTML and building a guild. I don't quite remember. So that's how I started coding. That went on for a little bit of time, and then more recently, a couple years ago, I guess I heard on the radio that you could learn online for free, so I just started searching for my options to see what I could learn, and it went from there.
What kind of radio was it? Like regular radio?
I don't know what,
like
I forget.
specific?
I think it was CBC. There was an episode on online learning.
Thank you, CBC.
Yeah.
Hello. Okay, awesome. So I did a lot of like sporadic coding when I was younger. So my first like intro to coding was HTML, CSS. Back when it was like super ugly and it's only like a Word file that you tweet around. And then later on in middle school, I had this science fair project where I built a little like robot that was supposed to be a minesweeper, as in while like traverse a grid. But then it just ended up like pushing dirt around my room later on. So that was that. And then I got into university, did math and finance, ended up on Bay Street, and then like they had giant sheets of Excel, and I'm like, hey, this is really bad. I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna get fired. So looking to VBA to like write macros to make sure I didn't make any serious mistakes, and then later on became an actual developer. So.
Well, I can assume that I'm the oldest one of the team here, and I started dabbling with IT since my 16, 17, and doing development as a side track most of the time, but never did that seriously and never did that for real, actually. Just a script here and there. And what made me actually turn into being a full-time developer was my family. I got tired on every family meeting to spend about 20 to 30 minutes explaining what I did, what I do for a living. So I started just saying, yeah, I do websites. I do some small programming. And that was so much easier that I decided, yeah, I will be a developer just to stop explaining what I do.
All right, so I'll also answer the question. For me, the initial exposure to coding I had was in middle school, and it was Pascal. And I liked it, and I made some progress with it, but they never showed us what we could actually do with it, like we could build something or anything. It never went anywhere. It's more like kind of following a tutorial or something. And then during my university years, I got I had a page on Russian Facebook called VK. I had a page for selling like t-shirts. And I was like, how can I customize this page? And you could actually do some sort of limited HTML on it. So I kind of got into it back, and that's when I realized I like it. But it kind of went off. I studied business, and then I ended up in a marketing job where I was bored a lot of the times, and I was making a lot of little updates to the sites, and kind of gradually I started thinking, oh, could I actually become a coder without going to university, because I didn't know it was an option. And kind of through self-taught resources or self-teaching resources, I've eventually was able to get my first job. So the next question we're going to address is the resources. So this is the first question probably you're asking when you've decided to learn to code. The first two questions are what language and where can I learn? So could you share with us, not all of the resources you've tried, or not the recent one, but what would you credit as the most impactful resources that you've used in your learning, especially in the beginning stages, if you, the ones you remember? Oh, sorry. Yeah. I will pass the microphone. I didn't think that through. Sorry.
No, you need to press the button.
Yes. The mute, yes.
The mute button.
Hello. Okay. Do you want me to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay. When I was
truth only.
When I was a teenager, when I was a teenager, I saved up a bunch of money. Was like $20 because I made $1 an hour, and I bought my first HTML1 book. And then that was probably one of the most valuable things, because I started to make GeoCities websites and figure that out. So that was probably my first best resource.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So what made you consider buying the book? Did you know about other people doing HTML, you wanted to learn it, or how did you come about that book?
Well, there's no internet yet, so, well, there was, but it was extremely infant. Actually, my uncle was doing some cool stuff, so I decided to go and try to buy a book, and it was very expensive for me at the time, but I remember that being very essential in my career.
I'm glad you made the investment. Emily?
Hello. For me, I would say the most valuable resource was just Googling stuff. I do that. That's still the most valuable resource today. The bootcamp that I enrolled in helped with helping me translate those resources into actual code and day-to-day practice and being able to build things out. But yeah, initially I had started out with courses through Coursera for free, but I feel that what Quincy was mentioning, they only take you so far in terms of here's how to create a string or whatever, and couldn't really take me further. So I found that actually just Googling using Stack Overflow and YouTube videos and reading documentation of the software that I was using, the official documentation, was the most helpful.
Makes sense. So another question. When you're Googling, do you decide that I'm going to build this particular project, this idea, and then you start Googling, or do you get oh, I want to learn this technology, and now I'm going to look for that specific technology examples?
It really depends. If I'm learning a new language, brand new, I might start out with a project there's probably a to-do tutorial on how to build a to-do list in every single language you can think of. And so if it's a new language, I might start by project. But if it's something that I'm working on for work that's a little bit more feature specific, then I will just Google the specific problem and how to solve it.
Makes sense. Andrew?
Who do I attribute? I attribute most of my, success in learning how to code to FreeCodeCamp. I found that they teach very well how to think like a developer, how to go through solving algorithms. That was a main part of how I got in that mindset. So just working through their track of front end got me really far, I think.
So I have a question. During your process, because Andrew is, as Izzy mentioned, the person who became, from a carpenter, he became a coder in 5 months. So my question is, during that these 5 months, have you used any other resources to supplement your knowledge, or did you commit fully to only FreeCodeCamp, or was it enough? Did you have to like Google stuff around, or did you go through other courses?
Yeah, the second site that I used was Udemy. I bought just a couple Udemy courses. One of them was focused around building a responsive website. So once I kind of got through that, that was like an moment of responsive design and how to code, you know, your whole layout. And really it evolved quickly from there once I did that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Maddie?
Yeah, so initially, like, the HTML and, like, VBA stuff was a lot of just Googling and asking people, and then later on, when I fully committed to becoming a developer, I, like Andrew, like, bought a couple Udemy courses when they were on sale, and also used, like, very heavily FreeCodeCamp. And, like, me, myself, I'm very, like, resource agnostic, but I find that, like, I was at a point where I didn't even know what to learn, so it was very good to have, like, a guided process, and I particularly liked Udemy because I'm more of a video-based learner, and what I could do is just, like, ramp up the speed, watch the video, and then shut it down and try to, like, replicate everything. And I found that to be, like, a really good way for me anyways to reinforce my own learning and make sure, like, the speed is what I want it to be. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Leo?
Yeah, for me, when I decided to move to Canada, I also decided to make a career shift. So I spent 6 months prepping myself before going to the Lighthouse Labs bootcamp. And one of the resources that I used was the FreeCodeCamp. It was awesome. I did just the front-end certification. And I think the most interesting thing there is that they don't give you the answers. They give you the resources to research for the answers. So you see what you need to do, the use cases and things like that. You need where to find for help, but they don't hold your hand and say, type this, type that, type that. And this is the thing that I had to learn to be a developer. It's not to have ready-made answers, but to find my own answers all around.
Makes sense. For me, I've used a lot of weird resources on my way because I've asked a developer at work, even before my marketing job. I was at the startup doing some like project management stuff, and I've asked, how can I learn to code if I want to in my spare time? So he recommended Codecademy, and he gave me a link to a eloquent Ruby book. So I got through the first page and I was done. And Codecademy also didn't go well. I finished the course on, I think it was also Ruby or whatever they have there. I've stopped right after because I didn't know what to do next. And when I started researching, I was looking for stories of people who have made the jump from a different career to development, because I wasn't interested selfishly in the people that went to university to study computer science. I'm like, these people are already set. But I'm looking to see if it's possible to do so without it. So I've started Googling those stories, and through those stories I found the resources. And initially, the first thing I found was this website that listed kind of like steps. So you follow this beginning JavaScript book, and you kind of supplement it with Codecademy. And I kept going like this and kept discovering resources, some Treehouse, some Code School. But it was also like the panelists said, it was just me following tutorials. I didn't know, like, I knew the syntax of JavaScript, but I couldn't code JavaScript. And the aha moment came when I was going through the JavaScript algorithm challenges on FreeCodeCamp. And I'm so happy I found it, because without FreeCodeCamp, I don't think I would be here today. I'd probably have stopped learning because I didn't know how to apply the knowledge. So that's what kind of helped me the most is the algorithms of the FreeCodeCamp, and later on the front-end projects. So, and the next question we have is my favorite topic ever is the habits. And so I have like sub-questions here, but use your own discretion what you want to talk, just talk about what you want. Because it has this. How do you structure your learning effort, daily or weekly or like after work? How do you build the habit of coding, and how do you decide what to learn? So yeah, what are your coding habits?
I'm going to start. I think it's pretty relevant to what's going on now. I was a cook for 13 years. I was working 70-hour weeks, and full discretion, I was probably making 20 grand a year. It was scraping by, very, very difficult. So I didn't have the time to learn. Like I really didn't. My sacrifice was at that time. This is 4 years ago. I had to stop hanging out with my friends. I had to completely sacrifice my social time. And I thought, like, you really need to be dedicated to it. If you don't have the savings to survive for I don't mean to like knock it, but some people must have some savings to continue for 5 months, like, you know what I mean? And some people come from a meager or a less privileged standpoint. And I think that that's very relevant and important to mention, because I think it's really difficult. It's hard for people to get there. So I finally got out of it. I was saved by a company. They found me on LinkedIn. I didn't even apply because I was building silly little things, and just every day try to chip away like an hour. I used FreeCodeCamp in the beginning, and I remember it was so small in the beginning, but my habit back then was just to like find that hour every day, or two if you have it, and keep going. Don't stop, because if you lose momentum, that's when you stop learning.
Makes sense. Emily?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the point about the momentum. So one thing I try to do is code every day, and as soon as I like feel like I've gotten out of it, like I do that every day for work, but even in my spare time on the weekends, I'll try to do a little bit of dabbling here and there. Some other habits that I do is when I'm like at home cleaning or cooking, I'll put a conference talk on. So there's a really great website called Confreaks, and a lot of tech conferences around the world will have all of their talks, their videos posted up there for free, and you can access years worth of conference talks. So if I'm listening, doing something around the house, I'll just put that on. Or if I'm traveling, I'll listen to some podcasts. And yeah, that's usually.
Which podcast would you recommend?
There's, there was one, I can't remember. It was
FreeCodeCamp.
FreeCodeCamp. You'll have
relatively new. It has like
six
2 days
podcasts. Code Newbie was one of them. And there was one that was Ruby related, but I think it was called Ruby Rogue. Yeah, Ruby Rogue. Those were the ones.
If I could intercept for a second and recommend some more podcasts. I'm really enjoying the Code Newbie, especially like the fact that they have so many episodes already made. There's like 200 episodes, so you can, not 200, probably 100 and something, but you can go back and see whatever title feels most speaks most to you, to your situation. I think if you listen to it and you listen to the story of the person who made the transition, it can really help. Another podcast that the Code Newbie has just launched is called Base CS, and it is amazing. It's for us who never went to the computer science to study computer science, we don't know much about it. Like we know it through actual application of knowledge, but we sometimes lack that knowledge, and we have these gaps that we don't know which gaps we have. So it kind of addresses that, and it teaches you computer science in a not in a simple way, but in a way that is easy to understand to humans, to regular humans, not the humans that are, I operate in terminology, that kind of humans. But yeah, so sorry to intercept this, but Andrew.
So my story, I think it's a little different for how I set myself up to learn. Like he said, so I was a carpenter. I was laid off for the winter. I kind of had a decision to make, either just start learning kind of full tilt, which I did. That's why there was such a short time frame before I got a job as a front end. So for me, it was just kind of putting a lot of hours every day into learning, which kind of set me back because I felt rushed, and I tried to learn it too quick. I didn't get a good base of knowledge, which I explained in my Medium post that I kind of had to restart, go back a little bit, and really learn stuff. So I think a key point to that is kind of don't rush yourself like I did. It'll save you some time and frustration trying to build something that you don't understand how. So yeah, that was me. It was just putting a lot of hours into learning to do the career switch, because I was kind of on limited time of being laid off, and so you don't really get a lot of income when you're laid off. So yeah. And yeah.
How long usually is that period? Is it common, I guess it is, to the carpenter jobs and that sector in general?
Depending on what you do in carpentry, I mean, if you're doing finished work, it can be short. Maybe you won't even be laid off if you do finished work, but I wasn't doing finishing. I was kind of rough carpentry, doing stuff that required to be outside, so
makes sense.
Yeah, not too feasible to work there.
Okay. Maddie? Any of those?
Yep. So like, to me, my favorite thing is trust the process, and that means like don't be so goal-oriented, because sometimes it will take you longer to get things, and you feel like you're slowing down, and that makes you lose motivation, blah blah. But so I went through a process of like figuring out, okay, I'm working at a startup. The startup clearly do not, care about me coding, and they're not really like into that. They just want me to do like financy stuff, but I really want to code. So what do I need to do to be able to get a developer job? And then so I tried Angular, I tried React, I talked to a bunch of developers. React was the final pick, and then I went about like looking at the curriculums to figure out like what series of courses do I need to learn to like go through to be able to like be a competent developer. And once I had that figured out, it's literally like planning a very detailed schedule. I'm gonna spend like 4 weeks on this and blah blah blah. And at like the entire time I was actually working at a startup, which is like long hours and whatever. But I would just say to myself, hey, you're going to get up at 6, you're going to go to this coffee shop, you're going to code all the way till 10, and then you go to your startup job, and then you put in your hours, you do a good job, make sure you don't get fired, and then, you go get dinner, you're done at like 8, and you code all the way till 11, right? So that's pretty much like my day all the time. And I would try like code as much as possible on the weekend. And the other thing is like coding is one of those things where your competency is directly correlated to how many hours that you put into it and how many lines of code, how many bugs you make in Squash. So that's pretty much the process. And so like that worked out okay for me.
Perfect. Leo?
Yeah, my routine is usually I'm a morning person, so I wake up around 6, 7. And start doing 1 or 2 hours of code, and then I go to my actually coding work, and then I get back home and I'm done for the day. I cannot do anything else because I'm really tired. I'm not a kid anymore. I can't do that many hours anymore, and some code on the weekends. And one thing that I would like to say based on what she said, it is that you should create a routine, just like on the gym, so I heard, because I don't go to the gym, never. But so I heard that it's something like going to the gym. Create a routine, whatever you prefer, follow it, and most important, don't blame yourself by the people who are doing that for 10, 20 years already. So take your time, do the things in your time, and you will get there. You see some guys who do code just like magic. The guys from Facebook, the guys from Google, that you see their code and you say, whoa, that's magic. Take your time. You will get there. So that's what I have to say.
All right. I think my microphone might be losing power soon, so if needed, I'll take this one. But I'll just, as a precaution. All right. So in terms of habits, I've had a lot of troubles with not coding when I was, during my marketing job. I had no problem coming back because it was a pretty, I don't want to, but it was a pretty laid-back job. I didn't have to, do crazy hours or anything, so I could potentially come back home with my brain still, intact and code for a couple of hours, or 3 or 4. But then my problems began when I found my first coding job, and I wanted to learn on my own after work, but I was so kind of drained out of like all the mental energy. I couldn't force myself to do anything, and I was like, how do I keep growing, especially if the company is working with a technology that is not the technology you want to be working with in a year or so. So they will be moving, but currently, like current situation, right, they don't allow. So